So ADA currently finds itself on a downtrend, and I mentioned in the previous update, what I was looking out for was a deep correction made up of a WXY structure. And so I set out the Y wave to tap into this range between 35 cents to 37 cents. And you can see that we ended up exceeding that range. So if I bring in the fib tool and bring this to 42.73 cents. And so what you can see is the Y wave ended up exceeding its typical range between 1 to 1.236. And at the same time, on this move to the downside, we failed to retrace towards the 1.6 minute level. And so as it stands, it looks like we had a deep correction that played out as opposed to an impulsive move. And the Y wave ended up elongating, which can happen in a bearish environment. And if the price of ADA was to retrace towards the 1.6 minute level, that would then signal that we're bearish, given that that would trigger a 5-hour switcher, and we could see a continuation to the downside. Now, within this Y wave, it looks like we had an internal WXY switcher that played out, and that was confirmed once we ended up breaching below the wave W. So once we ended up breaching below the wave W, that then triggered a change of character, which then signaled that we were bearish. And so what I do is check to see if this Y wave ended up tapping into its typical range between 1 to 1.236. So if I bring in the fib tool and bring this to 40.42 cents. And yeah, so you can see that we ended up tapping into its typical range. And so I'm looking out for the price of ADA to have bottomed out at 34.21 cents and to see that reversal to the upside, where we could even breach below or above the local top. And should that be the case, it'll be interesting to see if whether or not what we are forming is either a WXY structure or a 5-wave move. And the only way of knowing if we have a WXY structure forming or a 5-wave move is if we exceed the typical range for the Y wave, which is anywhere between 1 to 1.236. So if we were to exceed this range here, whilst at the same time retrace towards the 1.6 minute level, that will then confirm that what we are forming is a 5-wave structure. And if we were to get rejected within the zone, that will then confirm that what we are forming is a WXY structure to the upside. And so, yeah, given that we ended up tapping into the Y wave target for this internal structure, again, now I'm looking out for that reversal to the upside. And so short term, next key region to be keeping an eye on, at least on my end, will be the 50 to 8.2% retrace level of this whole move to the downside. And that range sits between 38.98 cents to 42.62 cents. And so if the price of ADA was to get rejected within this region, that would then confirm that we are bearish, and what we could see forming is a deeper correction made up of a WXY structure where we then breach below this level here, whilst at the same time even breach below this level. And if we were to exceed this range, whilst at the same time break above this level here, the local top, that would then confirm that we're bullish, and it'll be a case of whether or not what we're forming is that WXY structure or a 5-wave move. Now, on the stochastic RSI, on the far right chart, you can see that we are within the oversold conditions, and the 8-hour chart also shows the same thing. And the daily chart, we are also within the oversold conditions. And so at some point, I'm looking out for the bulls to regain control of the market. And should that be the case, this region here will be one to be keeping an eye on. And you can also see that the 50 EMA also sits within this range. And so if we were to retest the 50 EMA and get rejected, that would then signal that we're bearish, and we could see a continuation to the downside. However, if we were to break above the 50 EMA, that could then signal that we're bullish, and the price of ADA could then even tap into this range here, or even better, retrace towards the 1.6 minute level, which could then trigger a 5-hour switcher. And should that be the case, ADA could even retest the 200 EMA. And so, yeah, that's something I'm going to be looking at for in the days and weeks to come, and I will keep you guys updated.